Hello, I'm Neil Quigley and welcome to the latest episode of my blogcast. Hope you're well and all is good with you. I managed to get tickets to go to the first of the two Springsteen gigs at Hyde Park recently as part of the BST series of concerts. I was first introduced to Bruce by a good mate of mine, Des, when he took me to see Bruce and the E Street Band in the 90s do a gig at Crystal Palace. I was blown away with how good Bruce was and how good the band was back then. Since then, I've been a massive fan, bought the albums, followed his career everywhere he's gone, kept a close eye on everything he's done. When he played Hyde Park in 2012 as part of the Hard Rock series, I made sure I got a ticket and went along to that. Once again, that was a fantastic gig, although the thing that I remember, and I think most people remember about that one, is for the encore, he brought on Sir Paul McCartney and they were doing a couple of Beatles songs together, but they went past the very strict curfew they have in Hyde Park. So believe it or not, they actually pulled the plug on them. So they pulled all the front of house speakers so nobody in the audience could hear what was going on. We could all see they were still singing and playing, so they obviously left the monitor speakers on so they could hear on stage. But it must have been really weird for Bruce and Sir Paul when they were playing Twist and Shout by the Beatles, and they're having a whale of a time enjoying themselves, going crazy, and all the fans are now in the dark and slowly starting to move away. It must have been odd, and it seemed like they didn't actually realise that they'd had the sound cut until they got off stage. That, I must admit, was a bit disappointing. However, I love what Bruce and the E Street Band did at their next concert. A couple of days later, they were playing a big gig over in Dublin. They started that gig by finishing the part of the song that got cut off in London. So they started halfway through Twist and Shout and then finished that before going into a cover version of I Fought the Law and the Law Won before they started their normal concert. That is just one of the many reasons why Bruce Springsteen is a genius. For this latest gig the other week, I got the primary entry tickets to make sure I could get in nice and early and stake my claim for a decent place. Been to quite a few of the British summertime concerts over the years, and it is all done very well in Hyde Park. It's very well organised. They have plenty of bars and food places, and the facilities are acceptable for that sort of festival vibe event. They do have 3 different stages dotted around the area, but my focus, I will admit, was on the main stage on this occasion. The first act on were Frank Turner and the Sleeping Souls. He has been about for years. He has had a little bit of success here and there and a few big hits. It was the first time I'd seen Frank live, and I thought he and his band were brilliant. If you've not heard of him, Frank Turner is certainly worth checking out. Have a listen, and if you get the chance to see him live, I would also recommend that as well. Springsteen's warm-up band for the main stage, if you can call them that, because they're an amazing group in their own right, were the Chicks. They were brilliant, sounded amazing in the sunshine, played all their big hits. They were lots of fun and put on a great show. I took my girlfriend Linda along for her first experience of Bruce. We got into Hyde Park about 1 o'clock, so spent the afternoon having a bit of food, getting some drinks, and just generally chilling out and relaxing in the sunshine. It was a gorgeous day, and of course, listening to the music on the main stage as well, but really just passing the time to get to the main event, the big deal, the real thing, the main reason I was in that field. The other really good thing about the afternoon was I managed to meet up with my friend Des, who introduced me to Springsteen all those years ago, and his son, who's also a friend of mine, Rich. So we stayed together once they arrived in the park and actually got to watch the concert together, which was brilliant. It was a good laugh. Lovely to catch up with both of them. Now, a few years ago, Bruce had some problems with his voice. He had to have an operation on his throat, which of course is always very dangerous for a singer. He had to rest and not sing for a long time, and then he had to retrain his vocal cords. Just like if an athlete is out of action for a long time, they have to slowly build up their muscles and their fitness when they return to play their sport. Bruce had to do the same with his voice. And I must say, I thought, even though he's now 73 years old, he was playing and sounding better than ever. The whole E Street Band were faultless. If you've never heard Bruce and the E Street Band live, they are phenomenal. You won't hear anything like it. They have got to be one of the best live bands. They're so tight, the sound is amazing, and they play 3 or 4 songs in a row back to back. There's no break. They just keep going and going and going. They came on stage at 7 o'clock and they left the stage at 10 o'clock. 3 solid hours featuring so many songs from the very vast back catalogue that they have. For me, even the set list was faultless, absolutely perfect. It was very clever and thoughtfully put together. Obviously, being a big fan of Bruce, I knew all the songs anyway, but they put it together in such a way where the night slowly built and built and built and built until we got to the first encore, which was basically just one big party. The entire crowd dancing and singing along with Bruce and the band. And just to demonstrate how good the band is and the fact that Bruce knows that, sometimes during the concert, he would just walk himself to the front of the stage, turn his back to the audience and just look and watch and admire the band. It's fascinating. Bruce is the ultimate entertainer as well. He knows brilliantly how to work the crowd. He doesn't say much to the crowd, but everything he says, the crowd listen intently. He does this quite long speech on this tour where he's talking about how a guy who was in his original high school band had died. And Bruce now happens to be the only member of that band still alive, which led to him writing the song Last Man Standing. But he talks about that and the fact you need to embrace, make the most of life and look after everybody and indeed the world the best you can. Normally, when an artist, whoever they are, talks for that long, even at their own gigs, it's unlikely they'll get the full attention. You could almost hear a pin drop as he was delivering that speech. That is the stage presence and respect that man has. So after 3 hours of non-stop hits, it had to be brought to a close. He was very careful this time to make sure he did not go over the curfew, and he made a big point of it as well. But he did finish dead on 10 o'clock as instructed. I had the biggest smile on my face at the end of that gig. I was buzzing for days. It was so good. I could watch it all again tomorrow and enjoy it as much, if not more. Him and the band are amazing, and they're all such great characters in their own right as well. You have, of course, got Stevie Van Sant, his guitarist, who was in The Sopranos and has been in other films and TV shows. Jake Clemens on saxophone, the nephew of his great and iconic original saxophone player, Clarence Clemens. It's just great to have that family connection, and Jake is a great performer in his own right as well. Not forgetting Max Weinberg, the drummer, who I think is one of the best in the business. He's just amazing. He supplies the power and Bruce is there at the front conducting it all. It's a joy to watch. As you probably will have gathered, I had a great time. Thoroughly enjoyed that gig. Cannot wait to see him live again. My girlfriend and I recently managed to get away for a week, which was brilliant. We went to Ibiza for 7 days. Now, I went there back in my early 20s. We stayed in San Antonio, kind of the main party area back then, which at that point in my life was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. We went very early in the season, in May that time, so the weather wasn't actually that great. This time, I'm a bit older. I fancied something a little quieter and a bit more relaxing. So this time we went to Playa Escana, which is a resort on the eastern coast of the island. Now, it does seem that flying can be a bit of a nightmare nowadays, and that was proved slightly by the fact our flight was delayed on the way out to Ibiza, and also our return flight was delayed slightly as well. But it was all fine, didn't slow us down too much, although on arrival, it did mean that we didn't get to our hotel until about 2:30 in the morning. At that point, I must confess, I was very grateful that we booked a private transfer from the airport. Nothing against being on the bus with everybody else. It's just that I needed a bit of peace and quiet, I'll be honest. And also, it goes directly to your hotel rather than having to stop everywhere. That was money well spent, I think, on this occasion. The hotel itself was good. We had half board there, so we already had our breakfast and evening meal sorted. Obviously, I had to talk to guest services and have a chat to the chefs to make sure I could get my celiac-friendly, gluten-free food, which I could. They were very helpful and very good. For breakfast, they managed to always get me some gluten-free bread and a gluten-free muffin, which they produced separately from the kitchen and kept away from everything else, which is what I require. And also, in the evening, if I wanted, they could do me some gluten-free pasta or a gluten-free pizza, as the other option was only a buffet, and they are really not good for celiacs. Even if the food is clearly labelled and with the best will in the world, they tend to have the gluten-free stuff at buffets next to the gluten-containing stuff. And you know what it's like. It's so easy to accidentally pick up the wrong utensil or the wrong spoon and use that for the wrong thing, which is generally not a massive problem for most people, unless, like me, you have celiac disease, and then it is a big issue. Anyway, it was all fine. They looked after me on that front. The whole point of the holiday was just to get away and relax and not do much, which is exactly what we did. In fact, during the day, we either laid by the pool or went to the beach, which was just across the road from the front of the hotel. The weather was great. It was 31 degrees, sunny, dry with blue skies all week, which was perfect. So I did manage to safely pick up a bit of a suntan. The pool in the afternoon did give you a bit of a flavour of classic Ibiza. They had a DJ playing for a couple of hours between 4:30 and 6:30 poolside every afternoon, except one afternoon when they had a slight twist on that, which I really liked. They had a saxophone player who rocked up with his own house music backing track and played along to that, which I thought was great. The pool at the hotel was really warm. Obviously, it's been consistently warm out there for a while. So when you went to cool down in the pool, it was actually like taking a lukewarm bath, which was very relaxing, to be honest. When we went across to the beach, I did manage to get in the sea a couple of times for a bit. Again, the sea was so warm as well. It was so warm. You know, sometimes when you walk into the sea, you get to that point just below your waist, and it kind of makes you take a sharp intake of breath. And then you need to get beyond that and get your shoulders under the water as quick as possible. That was not required. You could just stroll in all the way in, and it felt so warm. The only slight issue with the beach was there were lots of jellyfish that were being washed up onto the beach. Only small ones. The biggest one I saw was about the size of my fist. But not only were they being washed up, they were also clearly in the water as well. I saw a couple of them swimming, so that made me a bit wary. Although they weren't massive jellyfish, they could still sting you. And knowing my luck, I was convinced that I was going to get stung by one. Before I was aware of that, I was perfectly happy floating, paddling, swimming in the sea, even though there was a group of reasonably sized fish swimming around me. I was fine with that. But when I found out and noticed that there were jellyfish in that area, the only way I would go into the sea was to go into the clearest bit so I could clearly see exactly what was on the seabed and around me. But even then, I'd be lying there relaxing and a bit of seaweed would go into my hand, and that would be it. I could no longer relax. I was convinced I was being attacked by jellyfish. So it did make bathing in the sea a little tougher. It's not a complaint. They've got as much right to that water as I have. I understand that. The beach itself was nice, and there were a couple of bars and restaurants there too, which meant you can get a drink or a snack during the day, which is always helpful when you're having a hard day sunbathing. I did manage to read a couple of books while I was there as well. I only ever read autobiographies, so I read Harry Hill's book and Francis Rossi from Status Quo's book while I was out there, both of which I thought were really good, and I would recommend if you are interested in either of those two people. As I said, it wasn't necessarily the most rock and roll holiday. We didn't venture too far in the evenings. In our hotel every night, there was some musical entertainment, and also in the bar right next door, they also had musical acts on as well. I'll be honest, the standard of acts at both venues did vary greatly. Some were really good, others not so much, but all still enjoyable in their own unique way. One night at the bar next door, there was a guy called Keto who was playing. Apparently, he represented Switzerland as part of the band in the Eurovision Song Contest in Greece in 2009, and he's from Malta and has been on their X Factor. He could sing and did put on a great show. I've always quite fancied getting a caricature done. You know, you see people doing them in certain touristy areas in London, and I've seen them abroad before. There was a guy doing them right outside our hotel. I'd seen him a couple of nights before, and on our penultimate night, we were walking past him and there was no queue. So I thought, I'll get one done. It was €15 for a black and white one. So I thought, go on, I'll give that a go. Could be a bit of fun. So I was there posing for him for, I would say, about 10 minutes or so. I know it's kind of the idea, but I must say, I thought he was pretty brutal with the way he depicted me. After seeing that, I think I might now know how people feel when they see their spitting image puppet for the very first time. Joking aside, I was pleased with it. I brought it home. It's actually quite big. Probably going to put it in a frame and put it up somewhere. If I had an open fire, obviously I would put it there to keep children away from it. While we were there, even though we had half board at the hotel, we felt we had to venture out one night to try the local paella. Handily, it is normally naturally gluten-free in most places, and as it turned out, in the restaurant we went to 2 doors down from where we were staying, that was the case. It's a dish that is always served for 2 people, so you have to make sure, really, if you want it, the person you're dining with also does too. Luckily, Linda and I were both in the mood for having that, so we did. It was nice. We were a bit spoilt, really. We had an amazing one in Valencia earlier this year. This paella was very nice, but didn't quite live up to those standards, but thoroughly enjoyable nevertheless. As part of the hotel deal, they had an a la carte menu next door, which you were allowed to eat at for one night during your stay. So we booked that one evening. I must say, that was really good. They bought us a 7-course meal and made sure that every course was adapted for me to be gluten-free. Did an excellent job. The service was great in there as well. The staff were brilliant. And you could eat outside overlooking the marina there, which was great. So we had a fantastic time there. So that was worthwhile doing and a nice added bonus to our stay. After a week in the sun in Ibiza, I must say I did come back feeling very relaxed and very chilled, which was exactly what the idea of the trip was all about. I really can understand why people want to move out there and why some people spend a lot of time in Ibiza. It's a very cool place. The other week, I actually did something that I've not done for quite a while. A group of us from work decided to go for an impromptu picnic in one of the big parks near where we're based. We seemed to pick the night to go when it was possibly the World Rounders Championships. There was about 4 different groups of people all playing rounders. They looked to be having a fantastic time. I used to love that game at school, but I don't think I've played it since. It did used to get very competitive at my school, particularly when we were playing girls against boys. Anyway, we managed to find a spot between some trees away from all the athletes who were not necessarily drinking water or sports drinks, as far as I could see. All worked out quite nicely. We brought our own bits of food and drink along, had a nice chat and a catch up with each other. Conversations you don't normally get to have during the working day because you're too busy, so that was all good fun. Really enjoyed that. One thing I did find, though, is I still find it impossible to sit or lie on the grass and get comfy. I just can't do it. And then also, It was a bit of a nightmare trying to get up, I found, after I'd been sat on the grass for so long. Next time, if we do it again, I'm going to try and suggest we find somewhere where there are some benches to sit on, or at the very least, I might bring a deck chair with me, just to make it a bit easier on my old legs. Picnics are something I always mean to do more of because they seem like such good and easy fun, but never seem to get round to doing it. Maybe I'll be able to squeeze one more in between now and the end of the summer, weather permitting, it looks like. That's about it for this time. Just a reminder that you can hear my radio show Saturday afternoons between 2 and 4 on radio9springs.com. Thanks for listening. Look after yourselves and each other. Please take care. I'll speak to you soon. Bye-bye.